Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about the case of Michael Oher, and this is going to be a tragic case, however things shake out. So what's going on in this case, really briefly, is that Mr. Oher says that he thought he was being adopted, and instead they put him under a conservatorship. Now, if you've heard of a conservatorship, you might have heard of that from the Free Britney saga. And that was Britney Spears fighting to escape a conservatorship that she'd been placed under. Now, a conservatorship is normally used in a case of physical or psychological disability, somebody who's unable to manage their affairs and needs somebody else to step in and care for them and act in their best interests, manage their assets, manage everything. And so that's really what a conservatorship is for. They have a lot of utility in situations where people have suffered some sort of breakdown or, advanced age or this kind of thing. But they're not really intended for dealing with somebody who is fully able. So the backstory on this one is that Mr. Orr grew up in tremendously difficult circumstances. I'm not going to go through everything. People have probably seen the news on this one. But eventually he manages to get into a Christian school, and there things start to turn around for him, especially because he starts showing some real aptitude in sports. He turns out to be really, really good at it, and then later goes on to play sports professionally. So along this time, he's having very difficult circumstances because he's staying in public housing. He's got to travel long distances. He finds himself sort of couch surfing a lot with other people. And one of the people that this sort of happens with is the Tui family. Now, the Tui family, he starts staying there more and more. And eventually they start talking about adopting him. At least this is what he claims. Now, ultimately, they don't adopt him, even though on their webpage, as of right now, it says that he's their adopted son. But he was never adopted. Instead, they placed him under this conservatorship. And a conservatorship can be a very heavy document. It can be a very controlling document. So let's have a look at the conservatorship briefly, and then we'll go back to the petition. So this is the conservatorship order. And you can see it's long, but there's a few things I'm going to highlight here. So one of them is they note... They say it further appears to this court that it is Oher's desire that the petitioners be recognized as his conservators until terminated by an order of this court. So the conservatorship lasts forever until it's canceled. Now, this is an important point because there's been some confusion on this, and I want to try to clear it up because I think I've got a guess as to where the confusion comes from. And that is from another document. That is the petition for the conservatorship. So in court, you bring an application for something. You ask the court for something in a document, and then the court issues an order. We were just looking at the order, but now we can look at the request. And the request is not a legally binding document. It doesn't affect things. It just tells us what they were asking for. And if you look at the request, it says, it is still his desire that the petitioners be recognized as his legal guardians, at least until he reaches the age of 25, or until terminated by order of this court prior to that time. So the request in the petition that they were using to ask for the conservatorship said 25. And that number has been floating around with a lot of people saying it ended when he was 25. But that's not in the order. The order lasts forever. So this is still in effect until it's canceled. Now, I will say I've heard word that the Ohers have said that they're agreeable to canceling this conservatorship. But let's look a little bit more about what the conservatorship actually allows people to do, because it's got a lot in it. So the court notes, it further appears to the court that Oher has no known physical or psychological disabilities. That's important because those are the normal reasons why you'd impose a conservatorship. They also say, it further appears to this court that it is in Oher's best interest to apply Sean A. Tui and his wife, Leanne Tui, as conservators of the person and that they should have all powers of attorney to act on his behalf. Now, power of attorney is a tremendous power. It allows somebody to essentially legally step into your shoes and make decisions for you, make agreements for you, all sorts of things. It can be a very risky power. So if you're thinking about entering into a power of attorney relationship, talk to a lawyer. But it continues. It says, and further, that Oher shall not be allowed to enter into any contracts or bind himself without the direct approval of his conservators. So he's not allowed, according to this, he can't make contracts. And we make contracts all the time. This is a pretty necessary thing for life. If you order a pizza, you're entering into a contract. You are asking them to make a pizza and bring it to you, and you are promising that when they do that, you will give them money. That's a contract. In theory, you could sue over it, but nobody sues over the price of a pizza because it would cost more to sue than the pizza was worth. If you want to get a cell phone, that's a contract. Even if your cell phone company says it's not a contract, what they mean in that case is it's not a contract with like an early termination penalty, but it's still a contract because you agree to give them money and they agree to provide you with cell service. Everything, so much of what we do in life is a contract. And so this is an incredible level of power. It goes on to say, it further appears to the court that any and all medical decisions shall be made by the conservators, who will have full and complete authority to make these decisions and educational decisions in Oher's behalf. And they also get access to all medical and school records. So lots of power here. Any and all medical decisions. That is huge, because if he needs surgery or something, they're, in theory, the ones who get to decide that he gets surgery or not. So he wants out from this agreement. He wants it to end. And to be fair, the Tuohys have said that they are okay with it ending. So why do they get a conservatorship in the first place? Well, Oher's got a very different view on this than the Tuohys do. And Oher's view on this is, he says that they basically had a scheme that they were going to take advantage of him. He says that they thought he was a vulnerable person that they could take advantage of, and that I'll just pull up the language they use here. They say that they thought he was a gullible young man whose athletic talent could be exploited for their own benefit. So he's alleging that this is nefarious. What have the Tuohys said publicly in response? They have said that they think, or that the reason why they did it is that they didn't know that it was possible to do an adult adoption. And so they did this conservatorship because they wanted to be able to get him into a good football school so that he would have better opportunities, and this was a way to do it. Now, I'm just going to say, I don't really think either of them are accurate here. I don't think that we can make out this gullible, exploitative thing. I think that there's problems with that narrative. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the issues that I see with that. The other thing is this argument saying, well, we didn't know adult adoption was a thing. That seems very strange to me, because adult adoption has been available where they are for a long time, long before this. And they actually had legal counsel assisting them with the conservatorship. That's a lawyer who they refer to as Aunt Debbie, because she was that close to the family. And we'll talk a little bit more about Aunt Debbie as well as we go through this, because there's some wrinkles there. But if they have a lawyer on this, why wouldn't the lawyer say, hey, if you said you wanted him to be part of the family, how about an adult adoption? We can just get this taken care of. Boom, he's your kid legally. So that is, I think, a bit of a weird wrinkle as to why they would do this. Now, part of this fight also hinges around movie revenues. And I think that here there is some real confusion, because Mr. Oher, in his lawsuit, he talks about how the book, The Blind Side, Evolution of the Game, was put out by Michael Lewis, And he notes that Mr. Lewis is a family friend of the Tuohys, but then that turns into a movie, The Blind Side. And they say that they used their status as conservators to negotiate a contract about The Blind Side. Now, here is where things get really complicated. He says, upon information and belief, conservators negotiated for themselves and natural-born children, i.e., he's alleging that he was left out. The Tuohys dispute that. I want to see this contract because that's going to be a big deal. Was he on the contract? Was he not? But a contract price of $225,000 plus 2.5 of all future defined net proceeds. And he notes that they have amassed gross revenues of $330 million and still earns large sums of money. So he's saying, I was cut out of this money. I should have gotten this money. They were required to act in my best interests. There should be all of this money out here waiting for me. Well, I'm just going to explain a little bit that I think Mr. Oher is confused. And the reason why I think he's confused is a very common problem with dealing with Hollywood. He got, or the family there got 2.5% of all future defined net proceeds. Now, Hollywood is famous for their clever accounting schemes. In fact, the term is literally Hollywood accounting. And one of the things that's well known is that only suckers take a percentage of the net, because ultimately there's not going to be any net. The way the accounting is done is such that all of the money gets sort of sent out in other places in order to make sure there's no net. So a percentage on the gross is fantastic. Like, that is amazing. But a percentage on the net, you're probably never going to get paid. So I think he thinks that there's a lot of money here, and I really doubt that there's a lot of money here. In fact, the Tuohys and also the, have said, there's no money. There just isn't any money. And Mr. Lewis has said, I got some money out of this, but I've been sharing it out with the family, and there was a check for Mr. Oher, and he's never cashed it. So we'll have to figure that out. Where is that check? Does that check exist? Because if so, that's a real problem. Another thing he is very upset by is the fact that they contracted out his name, likeness, voice, appearance, personality, personal experiences, incidents, situations, and events based upon or taken from his life story. Now, when you are a professional sports player, that is hugely valuable. You know, use that for endorsements, you use that for all sorts of things. And so if he gave that up to Fox through this conservatorship and never got any money for it, that's a big deal from his perspective. So now there's a problem there. There's a signature that he says that it looks like his, but he doesn't know if it's forged. And he says that he didn't sign this document, and he didn't agree to it. And he thinks that he was either tricked into it or that it was a forged signature. So he doesn't know which. So he also says that there was money that went to the Tuohys Foundation. He wants an accounting of that. And one of the things he also asks for is that he asks that they not be able to use his name or likeness, the Tuohy family specifically, not be able to use his name or likeness for their webpage, for anything. Basically, he's saying, get my name out of your mouth. We're done. It's over. So this is kind of the breakup of a family here, in the sense that it appears that up until recently he thought of himself as their child, and has now learned that he's not part of that. Now the Tuohys have a response. They say that he came to them and asked for $15 million and said, if you don't give me this money, I'm going to blow up your public reputation, which that's not cool. We'll have to see if they can bear that out. They also say that the reason, that the conservatorship was just to get him into this school, and that they didn't know adult adoption was an option, or they would have done that. This is going to be a very, very messy case. if you are, I do criminal law, and one of the reasons why I do criminal law is because criminal law is, by comparison, very, very easygoing. And the comparison to where it's what we compare it to is family law, because criminal law is bad people on their best behavior in court. They're trying to look as good as they can, whereas family law is good people on their worst behavior. Family law gets messy, family law gets ugly, and even though this is around a conservatorship and so forth, this is really a family breakdown kind of situation. I think there are serious hurt feelings at play, and that's one of the reasons why this is happening. He thought he was adopted. He found out he isn't. That's gonna hurt. That'll feel like a knife in the back, and there's just no way to cure that, no way to make that feel better. He also thinks that they were holding back money from him, that there's these giant stacks of money that they were making on his name and keeping him out of, which, if you're already feeling stabbed in the back, is going to feel even worse. I don't think that money exists. I don't think it's out there. I think he was going to them saying, I want my cut of this money. Where's my money? And they're saying, we don't have it. The other reason, I said before that I don't think that the Tuohys are completely villainous in this. They got an agreement that is like a conservatorship that is way too strict, but they haven't used it to go after his football money. He's still got that, as far as we know. He hasn't made any claim that they've gone after that. They haven't really interfered with his life in the way that we saw with Britney Spears. We don't see any claims that they were paying themselves exorbitant salaries out of his money, or any of the other sort of methods that people use to steal money from the people they're caring for. Instead, they're actually quite wealthy independently. They apparently Sean Tuohy just sold his business for $200 million, which is a lot of money, right? They're doing just fine. So that doesn't mean that they couldn't want more money. People who are really wealthy want more money all the time. But if they were really engaging in this nefarious plot, don't you think they would have gone after his football money? I don't see it. As I said, I think that this is a tragic breakdown and misunderstanding in this family. And ultimately, I would love to see this have a happy ending. And the happy ending would be, the Tuohys open up their books and say, listen, there just isn't the money. And we're sorry. We screwed up on the conservatorship thing. We screwed that up. Let's do the adoption now. We'll kill the conservatorship and we'll do the adoption. The other thing that is a real wrinkle on this one, and that I kind of want to talk about, is Aunt Debbie's involvement, because I'm concerned about this lawyer, or about what's going on. Now, I can't say that anything nefarious or improper happened. It just, something smells off, and that's as far as I can get on this. But she represented both sides, Mr. Oher and the Tuohys, in the conservatorship, which is going to be significant because that means that there probably isn't any privilege or anything like that between them. But she also seems to have represented them on some of these entertainment agreements. And she also represents the Tuohys Foundation, that is their sort of charitable work. And so it's weird for a lawyer to do so many different things. And I'm just wondering, what's going on here? Is this, so I'm not going to suggest that she's nefarious either. I just think that she may have inadvertently put herself in a position of risk, in terms of conflict of interest risk, in terms of the Law Society or the Bar Association going, you screwed up. So we'll have to see. All of that is going to shake out in the wash. At this point, it is very early days. We haven't seen a response filing from the Tuohys, and that is still yet to come. So hopefully this is just kind of a quick summary and gives you a good understanding of what's going on and clears up some of the misconceptions. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this to be interesting and educational. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: CCFR, CAIM, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Larry Kalniak, Lindsay Metcalf, Here's a Coin, Legal Witcher, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, Vicky, and Dorky Dane. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. See you next time.